Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here. This is my preview for Chelsea's return to Premier League action tonight against Spurs at Stamford Bridge. A huge Premier League game, I think made even more important by the results we've seen from those teams around us in the past couple of days. But obviously, even without that, this is still a must-win for Enzo Maresca, a must-win for Chelsea in their hunt for Champions League qualification, but just in terms of the mood around Stamford Bridge. I absolutely dread to think what would happen if Chelsea do not get the job done tonight. But that's the current state of things. So hopefully the Chelsea players, Enzo Maresca, will produce a performance that lifts the spirits and, brings some momentum back at a key point of the season. In today's preview, we're going to look and I'll give you my thoughts on the team news, Romeo Lavia's latest injury setback. We'll look at Spurs and then I'll give you my predicted 11. As ever, please do get involved in the comments below. Please give me your predictions, your thoughts, your feelings ahead of tonight's game. And tomorrow morning, I'll be back to give you my breakdown, my review of the Spurs game, because it is a pretty late one tonight. But huge game. And obviously Enzo Maresca did his press conference yesterday. We knew Noni Madueke, Nicolas Jackson and Cole Palmer, all three of them would be returning. They have been confirmed and we'll get to whether I think they're going to start or not. But the big negative that created a discussion point after this press conference on Wednesday morning was the admission from Enzo Maresca that Romeo Lavia has suffered yet another injury setback. It's hard to feel like Chelsea ever miss Romeo Lavia because they really have never had Romeo Lavia as a serious player for Chelsea, because he's never completed 90 minutes for us. Even in his senior career, I think it's like 15 times. I know a lot of people bring up the minutes he's played for Southampton, but actually in his senior career, which isn't that long, he hasn't played that many 90 minutes. It's a real issue for him. And obviously now it just further exposes the oversight, the huge blunder in central midfield that was a red flag last summer when we opted to sell Conor Gallagher, when we brought in a worse midfielder, when we made that area actively weaker. We loaned out Leslie Ugochukwu and Andre Santos. It's been an issue all season, and unfortunately that's only being highlighted more now. You would just hope internally at the club they realise this. And there are a few things just looking at this game and as we look at this closing run of the season where there are going to be things about this squad that I kind of look at and go, if Chelsea get Champions League football, I think this is the reason why, like positively. Negatively, there are areas I'm looking at within this squad and individuals I'm looking at within the current club where I go, this is the reason why we didn't get it. And I think the oversight in midfield depth, quality midfield depth, is absolutely one of them. I hope for Lavia's sake, he can recover. It's just very hard at the moment to envisage him playing serious minutes for Chelsea anytime soon, because this has been his whole Chelsea career basically. So obviously a very difficult time for him. Can it be resolved? He still is a very young player. We'll have to wait and see. Spurs are obviously huge rival for Chelsea, and it's a game that Chelsea are used to winning. It's kind of a non-negotiable for Chelsea fans. You beat Spurs, you move on. And obviously, this is a really bad Spurs team. This is one of the worst Chelsea have probably come up against in a long period of time. 14th in the Premier League. And despite some surprising attacking stats, which have them second and pretty close to Liverpool for XG created, defensively, I think they're like 17th or 18th in the Premier League for XG conceded. That is why they are where they are. Tactically, under Ange Postecoglou, they've been a complete mess, and they have been for some period of time now. Even towards the back end of last season, that form was beginning to derail. And in the games that Chelsea have had against Ange's team, you've seen that tactical chaos that really is there, and Chelsea have been able to profit from it. Hopefully that will be the case again tonight at the Bridge. I do think, obviously there are some talented individuals within this Spurs side. I think Dom Solanke, is a decent centre forward. I think James Maddison is still a quality creative midfielder on his day. And they've got some exciting young talent coming through, the likes of Bergvall and Archie Gray. I think those are individuals that could, for the future, you would build around in your squad. I kind of think players like Van de Ven and Romero, who are likely to start this game, but obviously have had major injury problems as Spurs have had all year. I kind of think those two players, especially Romero, are a bit overhyped. I don't think Van de Ven is going to be able to last most of the game. And as we've seen before, Romero is a bit of a hot-headed player. He can have some really good defensive moments, but there are other times where I think he's a liability. So for Spurs, really, there is so much wrong with the current Spurs team, and you look at Chelsea's, even with their flaws, and Maresca was talking tactically before this game that, there's been a frustration that he wants to play direct and quick and at goal and playing a style that the fans want to see, that we saw pre-Christmas. He only said the first two parts. He didn't go and speak about, fans wanting it and, what we did pre-Christmas, but kind of that style of football. And the frustration is we come up against opposition that don't do that. That's a whole separate point that we'll probably talk about again. I don't really agree with Enzo Maresca about, but this is a game tactically that I think is going to favour him a lot more, because Spurs are not going to come to the bridge and sit in a low block. I would absolutely be staggered, and to be honest, even if they did try that, I don't think they're structurally good enough and defensively sound enough to even try and attempt to do that. So I think Chelsea will have space to exploit, and my hope is that will enable Chelsea to play a more engaging style of football, not the slow, very regressive possession ball that we have seen in recent weeks that has offered absolutely nothing and has completely stalled any of our momentum. So I think this is a must win. It has to be a win for Chelsea. Spurs are really poor, and I think tactically they offer Chelsea a lot of opportunity to hopefully capitalise on. So getting into my starting 11, in goal, I'm going to go Philip Jorgensen. I'd like to see Jorgensen a bit more before the end of this season, but again, talk about those areas that are vulnerable and the areas that you're going to look at and go, that's why we didn't qualify for the Champions League. If we don't, goalkeeper. Staggering how badly that situation has been managed. And of course, in recent days, we've heard reports that Chelsea are set to do an internal review of their goalkeeping department. I think it's pretty obvious, the goalkeeping department, what that review should be. It's you sell Robert Sanchez, you keep Georgia Petrovic, and you probably don't listen to Ben Roberts anymore. But I'm not entirely sure that's going to prove to be the actual end review, because, we know what the decision was made last summer between Sanchez and Petrovic, which should have never been made in the first place. So it's a really bad scenario, but just for Jorgensen's sake, listen, it's not a ringing endorsement of him. You could argue something for Marcus Bettinelli to play in this game, to be honest, as me and Louis did on the Chelsea Echo. Only half jokingly, because it's that concerning a situation, but just for the, I think Jorgensen deserves a lot more grace and opportunity, the kind to which Sanchez has been given at Chelsea, where I don't think he's deserved it. So Jorgensen in goal. The positive is Maresca tonight could field what many I think would deem Chelsea's strongest back four, and that would be Reece James at right back, a back two of Levi Colwill and Wesley Fofana. Of course, that partnership was blossoming before Christmas, when of course halted by Fofana's injury. I think that's a real positive. And Marco Correa, obviously, who's been an integral player for Chelsea this season. I've seen the voting has just come online for Chelsea's player of the season. And I think that, again, positively, Cucurella is going to be one of those names high at the top of that player of the year list. And I think rightly so, for his consistent performance and the goals he scored that have been quite important in recent weeks. I think we'll need a little bit more of that. But just his all-round play and the way he, I think in tight games this season, has helped Chelsea get over the line. His physicality, his determined nature, and just those things that I think have made fans fall in love with him, given a difficult start. So Cucurella, definitely one of the ticks and successes of this season, undeniably. Let's hope that continues. Midfield, who else is it going to be? Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo. I would just say about Enzo Fernandez, in a game where we suspect Spurs to play a high line, can Enzo Fernandez finally have some of his creative chances finished? I think, again, this is a type of game where you expect Fernandez to step up and really dominate, with an ability to turn with the ball, look forward and play a pass towards the attackers. It's kind of that game state that you think could really suit Fernandez, and obviously scored a very important goal in the reverse fixture. Then we get into the three behind the striker. I would start Noni Madueke. I think he's Chelsea's strongest winger. Output-wise, you can't argue against that this season. He's direct. I think, he's obviously got the speed and will try something. He's a bit of a maverick. I think that's been the problem in the last few weeks, especially since he went out on the team. I mean, we had problems pre those injuries for Madueke and Jackson. But, I mean, really, the lack of movement has been staggering and nightmarish to view, really. So I think that's what Madueke will bring. On the left, I'm going to go Pedro Neto. Admirable job from Neto as trying to be a centre forward. Obviously, he's not a centre forward. But what I want with two wide players, direct, speed, try and hit Spurs, try and stretch them, try and look for that space that will be created between the centre-backs, midfield, the full-backs, the centre-backs. Spurs' structure can be so chaotic. They leave so much space, and that is why they concede so much, because it's just structurally pretty incoherent. And I think a team like Chelsea should have enough to be able to exploit that on a number of occasions. Number 10 is obviously going to be Cole Palmer. And I think Palmer's hopeful revival in this closing run is going to be essential for Chelsea. And I think part of how that can happen is the return of Nicolas Jackson. I'm still a fan of Nicolas Jackson. I'm horrified that there are even reports of us trying to sell him in the summer and kind of being open to that. I mean, that's just absolutely bewildering to me, especially when you don't have a great situation. It's a bit like the Petrovic situation, right? It's not saying that Nicolas Jackson is the be-all and end-all, the greatest striker you've ever seen. Obviously not. But when you've at least got some competence there, you don't actively try and weaken it by removing the competence to begin with. That's just obvious. So hopefully Jackson can have a strong end to the year and show once again why he is a valuable player for Chelsea in the long term. And I think part of that is his connection and rekindling that chemistry with Cole Palmer that has been brilliant for Chelsea at times. And I think will be a key part of Chelsea's ability, if they are able to find some form before the end of this season. And, again, you don't want to revise history. Madueke and Jackson, it isn't like Chelsea's form went like that the moment those two players walked out of the team. Jackson was struggling to score even before then. Madueke was part of some bad performances as well. So it's not, when players are injured, they're kind of, their status and anything they've done wrong in the past kind of fades away and people kind of bring them up to mythical status. However, I do think Jackson will just give more balance to Chelsea as a football team. I think he will offer obviously a natural centre-forward presence to be able to occupy defenders, to drag defenders out of space that then can open up room for the likes of Cole Palmer to drift in. I think there's a lot that Jackson does in his game that just doesn't get appreciated. And I also think Jackson is underrated in the way he's able to set up opportunities technically for other players. So hopefully we see some of that tonight. I do think Chelsea will win tonight. I do. I'm not entirely sure how comfortable it will be, but I just think looking at the flaws of Spurs and the opportunities they will pass up, I think Chelsea should have enough, and hopefully Palmer will be one of those scorers tonight because he desperately needs a goal. Please do in the comments below give me your thoughts, your feelings and your predicted lineups for the game tonight. I'll be back tomorrow to review and give you my thoughts and reaction to hopefully a big 3 points against Spurs once again at the Bridge. Follow me across the socials and I will see you again very soon. All the best.